areas that has been severely cut is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA for short. The agency forecasts severe weather emergencies across the country. We hear a lot from them every hurricane season, and their forecasts save lives. With us now is Tom DiLiberto, former public affairs specialist and climate scientist at NOAA's Office of Communications. He was laid off last week. We're sorry for what you're going through. How'd you find out you were getting fired?
Yeah, I found out on last Thursday. I got a boilerplate email about 3:45 p.m. that kind of followed the OPM directives that said that I'm a probationary employee, so I can be assessed, and that my skills and abilities no longer met the agency's need, which is ridiculous.
Talk to us about the agency and the impact that these cuts will have. I cover hurricanes every year, and I know how people depend on these forecasts. But what will the cuts, how will the cuts impact that?
Yeah, NOAA, it stands for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So if you like the oceans or you are impacted by the weather in any sort of way, which really means everybody, you're going to be impacted by this. A ton of people got fired. That's basically going to lead to a short-staffed agency that was already short-staffed, now trying to do more with less. And that is just asking for a disaster to happen. We know extreme weather is going to happen: hurricanes, tornadoes, snowstorms. And now we're asking an agency to basically try and forecast these, make the public aware of the impacts, but do it with less people. You're just asking for a mistake to happen. You're asking for burnout to occur. And it's just pointless when you look at the importance of what NOAA does.
You say that the cuts will actually end up costing money. How?
Yeah, so NOAA has been well known that a dollar into NOAA leads to there being many more dollars coming out because of just exactly what NOAA does. NOAA makes sure that people and places and communities and buildings don't suffer disasters as strongly as they otherwise would. NOAA is in charge of making sure that fishery industry is as healthy as could possibly be. It's also in charge of making sure coastal areas are not as impacted by erosion and sea level rise. So by basically getting rid of these things or making it more difficult for NOAA to do its job, you're basically going to cause there to be more money being spent and more damages being felt than otherwise happening.
Why do you think NOAA was targeted?
I think this is a clear across-the-board attack on science. They don't like necessarily what NOAA does as it relates to climate change, and they don't like necessarily the fact that we help people because of the fact that we just help people. There's no ulterior motives at NOAA when we're trying to help the American public. At no point at NOAA has anyone ever said we're not going to give important information, data, and resources to a community based on who that community voted for. But we do know someone has done that. The president has done that when it's related to wildfires out in California. So I think there's a lot of issues with just the fact that we help others purely because we want to help others and because we're trying to help people deal with increasing extremes as it relates to climate change.
You're going to protest today in front of the NOAA building. What message do you want to send? What do you hope to accomplish?
I think it's important for people to know just how integral NOAA is into literally everything that they do. The forecasters at CNN are really great forecasters, but they're utilizing NOAA data all the time, whether they're talking about observations, whether they're talking about who can determine whether a tornado is an EF2 or ocean impacts or hurricanes. And I just want people to know that when it comes to who cares about the American public, it's federal workers. We do. Federal workers care so deeply about the American public because it's all we've wanted to do since we were kids growing up. I wanted to be a meteorologist when I was 8 years old, and I was able to live out that dream. And I want the American public to know that NOAA is still going to try and do everything they can to make sure that you're safe. But now we're having an issue where they're going to have to do it with one hand tied behind their back.
What's next for you personally?
Well, I'm going to a protest later today. I'm going to keep speaking out about the importance of NOAA and helping to represent those who are fired and also the amazing people who are still left at NOAA. And then I'm going to keep looking for jobs as it relates to communication about weather and climate. It's what I love to do, and I'd like to keep doing that.
What do you just give me a sense of what this next hurricane season will be like with these cuts?
So there were firings at the Aircraft Operations Center at NOAA in Lakeland, Florida. That's where the hurricane hunters are. I believe the flight director was fired from AOC. There were technicians fired, people who are engineers as well. So we know every single year, sometimes those hurricane airplanes sometimes break down or need a replacement part. That's going to be harder to fix now. We have less people to do that. We don't have the ability necessary to fly all the planes 24/7 than we did before. We're also looking at, just in general, more stress on the National Weather Service, who are the folks who make these forecasts. And we know there are firings across weather forecast offices across the United States, across the Gulf of Mexico as well. So basically, you're taking a situation that's already fraught. Hurricane season. That's so important. We always see the impacts of this every single year. And now you're saying, oh, let's tinker with this. That's a horrible idea. In no world does that make anybody safer.
Tom DiLoretto, we appreciate you being with us. Sorry to hear about your job. I hope the future is bright for you.
So many people likely had no idea what the Office of Personnel Management was before DOGE walked in. It's called OPM for short, and it is now considered really ground zero for President Trump and Elon Musk's purge plans of the federal workforce. Officials with Musk's DOGE team are effectively now in charge of OPM, running a shadow operation for Musk, leaving career employees feeling blindsided in the process. CNN's Renee Marsh has this new reporting for us on this. She's joining us now. Renee, what are you learning?
Okay, I spent some time really drilling down into what is happening inside this agency that went from, as you said, an obscure agency to now driving a lot of the communications for DOGE. And many current and former OPM employees describe an agency that has been captured by members of Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. And some of those DOGE appointees have deep, decades-long ties to Musk and his businesses. And those are the individuals calling the shots. We're told that DOGE members have isolated themselves on the 5th floor. They arrived at the agency on Inauguration Day, and soon after that, top career officials had their admin authority on key data systems related to personnel information of more than 2 million federal workers revoked. Those emails that we've reported so much about that have been sent directly to federal workers asking what did they do last week, and also the email offering a buyout if they decided to resign. I am told that career staffers at OPM had nothing to do with these communications. They're all coming from DOGE operating on the 5th floor of the agency. Even career HR officials, I'm told, weren't even aware of the email communications until they either heard about it on the news or heard about it from other employees who had received it. And as a recently departed OPM employee tells me, they say, quote, the federal workers at OPM don't even know what's going on, and we are getting blamed for allowing Elon Musk and DOGE into OPM. It's very well known within the agency that it's the shadow OPM, not the career employees, pushing the buttons. Not only is OPM ground zero for Elon Musk and his vision for the federal government, though, Kate, these career employees also tell me it's the testing ground for many of those actions that we are seeing across the government. They test them first at OPM. For example, on Inauguration Day, or the day after, I should say, many of those members of DOGE asked career employees to do an exercise in which they would cut some 70% of their workforce. And just last week, we now see, weeks later, OPM sent a memo along with OMB asking agencies to plan for large-scale reductions in its workforce. We know that Social Security Administration, for example, announced that they plan on cutting some 7,000 jobs. So again, not only is this agency being run essentially by DOGE, but it's also the testing ground for many of the actions that we have seen so far. Kate.
Renee, thank you so much for reporting on this.